This is the story of a woman named Name, as you have not named her. I will refer to her as the main character, who endures relentless cruelty from her mother-in-law and the indifference of her husband. Public humiliation and financial sabotage leave her broken and alone. However, instead of succumbing to despair, she channels her pain into a powerful drive for success. She rebuilds her life from scratch, mastering new skills and building a thriving business empire. As her success grows, she secretly plots a calculated revenge, aiming to expose her tormentors and reclaim her dignity in a stunning public confrontation. This is a story about overcoming adversity, transforming pain into power, and the ultimate triumph of the human spirit. I felt the first crack in my chest the day I heard my mother-in-law hiss across the dinner table that I was nothing but a parasite. She was wearing that condescending half-smile, the one she'd perfected, as if I should have been grateful just to be sitting in her house. My husband David barely turned his head in my defense. In that moment, the bottomless pit in my stomach told me something was deeply, grotesquely wrong. It was the kind of realization that burns itself onto your soul. I remember gripping my fork so tightly my knuckles went white, praying I wouldn't burst into tears in front of them. But I did. I cried silently, cheeks hot, breath ragged, absolutely humiliated that the man who vowed to protect me wouldn't even spare me a glance as his mother flayed my dignity like it was her goddamn hobby. And let me tell you, that night was just the preview, a quick trailer for the full-blown horror show my life was about to become. They took my tears as a victory. To them, I was weak, naive, easy to crush. My mother-in-law, Jessica, made it her personal mission to remind me I'd never be good enough for her precious son. She'd say things like, "This family isn't a charity," if I so much as mentioned I had trouble paying a bill, or, "You look tired. Are you letting yourself go?" if I showed up to a family gathering in a less than perfect outfit. All David did was shrug and tell me to relax, to stop making things a bigger deal than they were. Meanwhile, he used my insecurities like currency in private, threatening that if I didn't toe the line, he could always go back to living with his mother. The irony was that I had a job and paid rent on our little apartment, while David spent most of his money on weekend bar crawls with old college buddies. But no one cared about that. In their eyes, I was just dispensable. I should have run the second I saw how they operated, but I wanted to believe in love, in marriage, in the possibility that maybe I could belong to something bigger than myself. My own parents had died in a car accident when I was young, and I spent my 20s bouncing from one caretaker to another, never feeling truly rooted anywhere. When David came along, I attached to him like a lifeline, too blinded by desperation for companionship to see the red flags. Jessica played along in the beginning. She was sugar sweet at our wedding, wearing pastel pink, shaking my hand like we were about to embark on a great journey together. I realize now she'd been putting on a show for the relatives, needing to appear gracious and supportive. The minute the ring was on my finger, though, the mask fell. She realized I was alone, that I had no close family to back me up, no big inheritance or connections that might be useful to her. I was basically a stray dog her son had dragged home, and if I wanted any scraps from her table, I'd better bark on command. The humiliation started small snide remarks about my cooking, the way I did laundry, how I seemed too stupid to balance a checkbook properly. She'd make these remarks in front of the entire extended family at holiday parties. I still remember that Christmas dinner, the first one at their house after we got married. I'd spent hours preparing a side dish, cranberry sauce with a special recipe I found online. Jessica tasted it and spat it back onto her napkin, exclaiming, "God, that's disgusting." My face felt like it was on fire. Everyone else at the table exchanged awkward glances. David just shook his head, giving me a look as if to say, "Why do you always have to embarrass me?" I wanted to crawl under the table and never come out. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. Because after they got bored with petty insults, they started stepping up their game, looking for bigger ways to push me to the edge. Jessica found out I'd been saving for a down payment on a small condo, a place David and I could call our own so we wouldn't have to rely on her. She absolutely lost her mind. She accused me of being ungrateful, of trying to steal her son away, as though I were an evil enchantress out to break their precious bond. She told me flat out that she and David had decided we couldn't afford to buy yet, that we'd be better off staying in the white group's orbit. I confronted David, furious, and he admitted that yes, he told his mother about my savings, money from my job and a small inheritance from my grandparents. But guess what? He insisted we needed that money to invest in his mother's side business, some shady multi-level marketing scheme. He said it would help us in the long run. I stood there, speechless, trying to figure out if the man I married had lost his damn mind. Did he actually think giving Jessica my hard-earned savings was a good move? I refused, and that's when everything really hit the fan. Suddenly, Jessica decided to turn the entire extended family against me. She told them I was a gold-digging opportunist who only married David for convenience. She whispered that I was disrespectful, that I'd tried to break their family traditions, that I was basically trying to claw my way into their inheritance. The older relatives ate it up, some from loyalty, some from fear of crossing Jessica. They collectively started giving me the cold shoulder, inviting David to gatherings without me, forgetting to send me an invitation to milestone birthdays or holiday events. Then the sabotage got worse. She told my employer, through a cousin who worked in the same field, that I was mentally unstable and had a history of stealing. When my boss asked me about it, I nearly collapsed from shock. That was a lie so big I could hardly wrap my mind around it. But the damage was done. I was put on probation while HR investigated. It became impossible to focus, and I lost commissions I needed to keep my finances stable. One night, after a vicious argument, David tossed my suitcase at me and told me to leave. I remember the moment so vividly, him standing there with this smug twist on his lips, telling me to calm down and go take a walk or something, as though my meltdown over losing half my income was just typical female hysteria. Jessica was there, arms folded, eyes glinting with triumph. "We'll see if you can manage on your own," she sneered while I stood in the doorway, trembling with nowhere else to go. I ended up in a dingy motel off the highway, sobbing into the pillow, feeling like everything I'd worked for, my marriage, my sense of dignity, my job, had been systematically stripped away. I was so close to calling it quits on life altogether. But then, something inside me shifted. The despair burned itself out, leaving something sharper in its place, determination. I wasn't going to let them win. I picked myself up, found a new job, and started rebuilding from scratch. It wasn't easy, but every small victory fueled the fire inside me. And as I got stronger, I started planning my revenge. But something simmered in my gut that refused to die, a small, stubborn spark of anger. A voice that told me they want you to wither. They want you broken and defeated. Screw that. Fight back. That spark kept me alive. I filed for divorce the next week, though David smirked and said I'd never get a penny from him. "My mother's lawyers will bury you," he threatened. Let them come, I thought bitterly. I was past caring. My job was gone anyway, since the investigation ended with me being effectively blacklisted. Someone with Jessica's resources had probably greased palms to ensure my reputation was destroyed. So, I found myself jobless, soon to be homeless, clinging to the remnants of my self-respect by my fingernails. That's when I decided to vanish. I took what little savings I had left and got on a Greyhound bus to a city 3 states away. I refused to contact them, didn't even text or email. If they wanted me to disappear, then I give them the satisfaction for now. But I refused to stay dead. I ended up in a battered old apartment with peeling wallpaper and leaky faucets. I slept on a twin mattress I found on Craigslist. I had exactly 1 suitcase of clothes. But you know what? I also had my laptop and a fury so scorching it threatened to devour me every night. I researched ways to build myself back up. I studied courses on digital marketing. I read about stock portfolios. I devoured every self-improvement podcast I could find. My days were spent scrubbing dishes in a diner to pay the rent, but my nights were an inferno of strategy and hunger. I started a small blog under a pseudonym venting about toxic families and manipulative in-laws. People started commenting, sharing their horror stories. It gave me life. Their pain echoed mine. Their comments were like daily fuel reminding me that I wasn't alone and that maybe, just maybe, I could turn this pain into power. The blog began to gain traction, so I decided to self-publish a short ebook on the topic, Toxic Ties: How I Survived a Soul-Crushing Marriage. I used a pen name, quietly posted it on digital platforms, and to my astonishment, it took off. I guess there were a lot of people out there who needed to hear my story, needed to know they weren't insane for feeling suffocated by their own families. I made a few $1,000s in royalties, enough to upgrade my living situation slightly, enough to buy me time to plan my next move. And that was just the beginning. As the weeks turned into months, I realized that Jessica and David were probably congratulating themselves on having exiled me. But what they didn't know was that each second they spent gloating, I was evolving. I eventually took online courses in business administration and marketing. I stumbled upon an opportunity. An investor friend of a friend was looking for someone who understood social media branding. I pitched him on a plan to revamp his company's online presence in exchange for a share of the profits if I delivered a certain percentage of growth. He agreed, possibly out of pity or because he saw the spark in my eyes. Within 6 months, I doubled his conversion rates. He was ecstatic and offered me a small stake in his firm. Suddenly, I had legit capital to play with. I invested carefully, meticulously, watching YouTube tutorials about the stock market, reading books on real estate flipping. Every time I felt exhausted or discouraged, I'd remember Jessica's mocking voice. "We'll see if you can manage on your own." That voice became the bullwhip that spurred me on. I was unstoppable. In under 2 years, my portfolio soared. I was flipping properties in mid-range neighborhoods, earning 5-figure returns each time. My blog expanded into a full-fledged website with a membership community for survivors of toxic relationships. Then, I launched a line of self-care products aimed at emotional healing: candles, journals, daily affirmation booklets. It sounds corny, I know, but it sold like crazy because people resonated with the authenticity I poured into every product description, every social media post. My face wasn't anywhere on it, still too dangerous to expose myself, but my spirit was, and the money rolled in. People started approaching me for brand collaborations, featuring me on their podcasts. I do interviews, audio only or disguised with a different name, never revealing my true identity. The anonymity fueled the mystery and ironically boosted sales even more. I was no longer the humiliated wife cowering in a motel room. I was an entity, someone unstoppable, a guiding light for the broken. But as empowering as it was, a hunger gnawed at my gut. I wanted more than success. I wanted justice. I wanted Jessica and David to see me towering over them. I wanted them to choke on their regrets. And that desire roared louder every day. I started secretly following them on social media. Jessica still posted smug family photos from her lavish dinners, boasting about her charitable events. David had joined her MLM business after all and was constantly pushing health supplements online. They looked so damn sure of themselves. According to some acquaintances I still had in that circle, Jessica had expanded her real estate portfolio. She was part of a local business association. She and David were in the final stages of launching a new investment firm that targeted high-end clientele. My mouth twisted in disgust. They were painting themselves as a classy philanthropic family, hosting charity galas and rubbing elbows with local politicians. An idea sparked. What if I could buy out the property they were drooling over for their new office headquarters? I heard through the grapevine it was a historic building in the city center, one they planned to renovate as the crowning jewel for their new venture. Owning it would give me the upper hand. So, I quietly approached the sellers, an old couple who wanted to retire, and paid above market price, sealing the deal under one of my corporate LLCs. When the transaction finalized, I nearly danced around my kitchen. Jessica and David had no clue I was behind that LLC. That building would be the perfect stage for my final savage unveiling. But that was just the opening move. I also discovered they were short on capital. They were courting potential investors, offering them seats on the board. My alias was well known in certain investor circles, so I arranged an introduction. They jumped at the chance to pitch to me, thinking I was some wealthy angel investor who could rescue their project. The day we had our virtual meeting, my camera off, voice masked by a subtle distortion, I almost let out a laugh at how desperate they sounded. Jessica's voice dripped with faux charm. David's cockiness had a nervous edge. They never suspected a thing. I feigned interest, strung them along, demanded to see financial statements. They poured out their hearts, probably imagining fat checks. In truth, it was all part of my plan to gather more leverage, to see exactly how precarious their finances were. Turns out, they were on shaky ground. Jessica had leveraged her properties to bankroll this new venture. David had no real savings. He was entirely dependent on his mother's nest egg. If this investment firm didn't launch successfully, they'd be in deep trouble, maybe even lose their entire real estate portfolio. I almost felt giddy, but I had to keep my cool. Had to maintain my mask until the big reveal. Timing was everything. I wanted a public humiliation, a final confrontation so grand it would haunt their nightmares forever. I bided my time, letting them sweat while they courted other investors. Meanwhile, I arranged something else, a major philanthropic event in the city. A glittering charity gala, sponsored by my brand's philanthropic wing. Something that would lure them in. I had a business partner help organize the event, ensuring our logo was plastered everywhere, but my real name remained behind the scenes. It was for a cause that Jessica loved to flaunt association with. Education grants for underprivileged youth. She'd never miss the chance to posture like a saint. Sure enough, they both RSVP'd. They saw it as an opportunity to mingle with high rollers who might invest in their venture. When the night of the gala arrived, I wore a sleek black gown and a delicate mask, more for drama than anonymity. Though my heart hammered so loudly I feared everyone could hear it. The venue was lavish, an old art museum with marble floors and towering columns. My staff had turned it into a sparkling wonderland with golden lights and luxurious table settings. Champagne flowed, cameras flashed, and the city's elite glided across the hall in all their expensive finery. I slipped from group to group, watching Jessica and David from behind corners, trying not to let my fury break through my polite smile. They were schmoozing with donors, handing out business cards, acting like royalty. I noticed how Jessica's face tightened whenever she saw a bigger fish ignoring her. David was trailing behind her like a second-rate sales rep. The sight of them nearly made me laugh out loud. Then came the night's highlight, the unveiling of a massive donation check to the cause. The MC, a well-known local figure, stepped onto the stage and announced a surprise philanthropic twist, courtesy of our main sponsor. That was my cue. My business partner introduced me by my pseudonym, Lisa White, the philanthropic entrepreneur behind the brand. I walked on stage, mask glinting under the spotlights. The hush in the room was almost electric. Jessica and David were in the audience, their heads tilted curiously. I could see confusion in their eyes. They recognized my figure, maybe, but couldn't quite place me. Then, with the entire crowd watching, I slowly removed my mask. I swear you could hear the collective gasp. Jessica's face turned ashen, like someone had poured a bucket of cold sludge over her. David's jaw literally hung open for a few seconds. Everyone just stared. Then, whispers started rippling through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in, and I took the microphone. My voice shook at first, but I steadied it. I announced that the brand they'd all seen rise to prominence, the online community for survivors of toxic relationships, the self-care line, the philanthropic ventures, was created by me. The woman who'd been demonized by her own family and ex-husband. I thanked the guests for their support, told them how much it meant to be able to help people who'd suffered as I once had. I glanced directly at Jessica. She looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Then, as if that wasn't enough, I signaled to my staff. They rolled out a giant check, $10 million. The crowd gasped again. Jessica's eyes nearly popped out of her skull. The giant check was made out to the charity, but that wasn't the real shocker. The real shocker came when I explained that the money was from the White Group Foundation, which was an entity I controlled. And that, oh by the way, I happened to have just purchased the grand historic building that Jessica and David needed for their new investment firm. A wave of murmurs swept the room. I flicked a piece of lint off my gown, ignoring how my heart pounded. Then I turned to Jessica and David, who looked glued to their seats. I hear you both have big plans for your firm, I said into the mic, my voice radiating confidence I'd never felt before. It's interesting, I recently got a pitch from you. You wanted an investor to help you secure your dream headquarters. Well, guess what? I bought the property outright, and I bought the controlling shares in your venture. Another ripple of shock coursed through the crowd. You could see cell phones snapping pictures, guests exchanging wide-eyed glances. Congratulations, I continued smoothly, because now I own it all. And I suppose that means I own you too. Betrayal, I have to admit, revenge tasted sweeter than I ever imagined, but it wasn't just the money or the public takedown. It was knowing that I reclaimed my sense of self-worth. For too long, I let them define me. Now, I was writing my own story, and I wanted everyone who'd ever been stuck in that same nightmare to know they could do the same. I pulled out my phone and typed a short post on my website. They said I was worthless. Tonight, I proved them wrong. It got thousands of likes within minutes. Driving home, the city lights blurred past me, and I found myself remembering that broken girl in the motel, fists clenched around her last shred of hope. I felt nothing but pride for her, for me, for us, because we fought. We didn't give in, and we rose higher than our enemies, the white group, ever dreamed we could. And now, I want you, anyone reading this, to feel that same fire coursing through your veins. If you've ever been slapped down by the people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever been humiliated in public, robbed of your dignity, or told you'd never be anything without them, I'm living proof that you can shatter those lies. You can build an empire from the rubble they left you in. I'm calling on you right now. Don't let their cruelty define you. Don't let their smug smirks be the final word in your story. Join me. Share your tales of triumph. Become part of a movement that says we are not your victims. We are our own heroes. This isn't just about petty payback. It's about reclaiming our power, about inspiring each other to rise beyond the labels and the venom spat at us. They tried to break us, but we turned our pain into unstoppable momentum. Keep going, keep fighting, because the world is waiting to see the greatness you'll unleash once you stop believing their lies. Tonight, I stand at the pinnacle of my revenge, but for me, it doesn't end here. This victory is a clarion call to everyone who's ever had to swallow tears of shame inflicted by those who should have lifted them up. Instead, it's your turn to roar back to life. You deserve to walk in the light of your own success, to watch your enemies cringe when they realize they could never kill your spirit. So go do it. Go reclaim the narrative. Shatter the illusions they forced on you. Blaze your own path to victory, and let your final words to them be, "Who's worthless now?" Because in the end, this isn't just my story. It's the story of anyone who's been pushed too far, who's tasted betrayal so bitter it made them gag on their own heartache. We are Legion, and we will not be silenced. Let's burn the old scripts. Let's write new ones. Let's be unstoppable. They thought they could break me. Jessica, with her condescending smiles and vicious words, and David, with his empty promises and spineless indifference, they both believed they could reduce me to nothing. They called me a parasite, sabotaged my career, turned my world upside down, and then kicked me out like trash. They wanted me to disappear, to wither and die in some forgotten corner. But they didn't know me. They didn't know the fire that burned inside me, the stubborn refusal to be defeated. They thought they'd won when they tossed me out, homeless and jobless. They were wrong. That was just the beginning. I vanished, rebuilt myself from the ground up, turned my pain into power. I became an entity, a force to be reckoned with. I built an empire, a testament to my resilience, a monument to their cruelty. And then, I made them pay. Publicly, humiliatingly, on their own turf, in front of their own crowd. I exposed them for the manipulative, greedy people they were. I took everything they thought they owned, their precious investment firm, their grand headquarters, their pride. I made them watch as I rose from the ashes, stronger and more powerful than they could ever imagine. It wasn't just about revenge, though. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my self-worth. It was about proving to myself, and to anyone who's ever been told they're worthless, that we are not defined by the people who try to break us. We are so much more. We are unstoppable. And this is just the beginning.